joined by a live guest pretty soon. Hopefully, I meant to start about 50 minutes earlier, running late, uh, late night workout, and was cooking some food actually. So hopefully we can get started. I wanted to get back into some manosphere type conversations, which I haven't had before. The last time I did, about 2 months ago, it got a little spicy, including with my own, with one or two of my moderators, because, well, they're both women. So, although my black female moderator, she really didn't give me any pushback on what I was saying. The two who were actually giving me pushback were actually white, which is kind of funny. Um, one, here we go. What's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on?
Not much, man. I was just giving an introduction to everyone. I was just telling them that we were going to talk on, some more like manosphere, black masculinist type issues. Um, I got that. I don't. The first time I've heard the term black masculinism was through Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. I don't know if you ever watched him,
I think I
but
might have heard of them. Yeah.
I think he actually teaches college courses on that. Um, when I've seen his live streams and his videos, he's talked about the fact that, as a black studies professor, he noticed that there were a lot of women coming into his college courses who weren't even black women to kind of study up on how to date black men.
Interesting.
Just, yeah, it was very interesting. And also with what he was teaching, he was actually teaching stuff that shows sort of like the neglect of um, issues dealing with black men, stuff like that. So I watch him from time to time. He's a little long winded, so I don't watch. I don't watch it for too long. But he's a good guy. So I do recommend him to anyone who's interested in that sort of stuff because he can talk about it from a more erudite, point of view. I think.
hmm hmm
But so just to get started, if you want to introduce yourself or
Okay. Yeah, certainly. Well, it's a pleasure being here on your live. I know I've been
I appreciate it.
watching you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I was like, anytime I get the pleasure to come on live, I definitely take advantage of it. Um, but my name is Ty. I have a channel. It's called Simplified Accounting, where I just talk mostly about business finances and all that good stuff.
Okay.
But a little bit about me. Um, I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now living down here in good old state of Georgia,
Okay.
right outside of Atlanta. Um, been basically working in the finance field for the past quarter of a century now. Um, Also, I teach college courses. So, uh, into education, the professional corporate life. And I'm like you, every day I come through the struggles sometimes of being an African American male, black man, especially down here in the South sometimes. But I've been following YouTube now, I would say for the past like 8 years.
Mhm.
Um, I have looked at a lot of the manosphere content, very familiar with Kevin Samuels. Used to listen to him, God rest his soul, but used to listen to what he has to say or had to say about, topics in the manosphere, high value men and all that. And of course, I differed somewhat with his approach to high value men, but nevertheless, I used to listen to him. I'm also familiar with the manosphere. I've listened to the red pill content. I'm familiar with that, but a lot of those guys say some things I agree with, certain things I don't. But I have my interpretations of masculinity because I consider being born and raised in a very masculine era, a very masculine town. I come from a two-parent household, and my father taught me how to be a masculine man without having to really teach me, if that makes sense. It's more about showcase and action, so to speak. So when I hear the topic of masculinity and real men and high value men, I have an idea what that means based upon my upbringing and everything like that. But I have my own approach and definition of that over the years. And I'm married. Married. I have a wonderful black female that I married down here in Georgia. So happily married, and my wife, me and my wife, we have a special bond. We are as one. So a lot of things that I see in black YouTube, I can't necessarily say anymore as much, even though I do understand what a lot of the brothers are saying. Okay, but can't really say as much anymore because I do have a black woman that I'm married to. So that's a little bit
True.
about me. Yeah.
As you've seen some of my content, I go a little bit hard in the paint sometimes,
Oh yeah,
but
I've
it's
seen it.
not really. Some of it's just meant to be humorous. Other times, it's meant to. Mm, it's biting, but it's meant to be just honest. It's not. I never do it just to be like cruel, just to like
Right,
kind of make fun of them.
right.
Now, sometimes I do have a friend on, and sometimes he'll be he'll talk from a point of like he's just upset, and
Hmm.
you can kind of tell in what he's saying. Um, but usually it's dealing with like stuff that he's personally experienced. So it's not like he's just saying it just because he hates black women or whatever.
Hmm.
Usually he's like going through some actual stuff.
Hmm.
So it's kind of it's a little cathartic for him to come on to my live streams and talk about it. So
Hmm.
like so if you ever seen the videos where we're like in the car, like driving along talking about stuff,
Right.
that's like our little catharsis. Usually we're like on the way to the gym or going somewhere like the comic book store or something like that. We're just like chewing the breeze, talking about stuff. And I'm like, and either he will say or I'll say, hey, this will make for good content. So he's like, all right, turn the phone on. So I'll turn the phone on and then make it into a video.
Right.
And then I'm always surprised that people actually respond to that. So, shout out to your cousin because he told me this years ago. He was like, man, you ought to do like a YouTube channel or something. And I told him, I was like, man, no one wants to hear me talk about this stuff. He was
Hmm.
like, yeah, but it's funny. I was like, well, I was like, well, I'm not trying to be funny. He's like, I know. He said, that's what makes it funny though, because he said, you're not trying to be funny. It just comes out that way.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what I did. Like, so I started this about 3 years ago. And, it started off sort of tepid. Like I was just kind of testing the waters, seeing how it went. And I actually started enjoying it. So I've been doing it more and more. And now I'm at the point where I will actually do this full time, once I break like 10,000 subscribers. So if I break 10,000 subs by the end of this year, I'll just do this full time and like put all my, put all my little pennies into this, so to speak.
Yeah, this is fun. I mean, I don't make as much content, but I'm very familiar with a lot of individuals in the manosphere. And I find it funny, a lot of things, topics what they talk about, especially when it comes down to black women. And believe it or not, I used to go through the same things. I was played many times, rejected. Like I always tell my cousin all the time that growing up, dealing in the Generation X era, especially in the 90s,
Yeah,
where I would like, because I'm a big sports fan, so I like to consider like draft, like football, well, really the NBA draft, where it's 1 or 2 rounds. And I always felt that I was the guy where if I was in a basketball draft with females back in the day, I would be the last pick in the second round.
You think
it
so?
was like it was like always somebody that they chose that was in their minds better than me, even though
Mm.
I grew up in that time where I was told you gotta be a gentleman, gotta be the nice guy, and you do that, and you don't get picked, or you get picked last, or the thug, the thug that don't go to class, or the captain of the football team is like they had the easy pickings, but the nice guys always finished last or didn't get picked at all. So that was me, and for a long time I used to have that mentality, of course, till I moved out of the north and came down here to the south. And I actually met my wife and married her, and kind of gave me a different perspective. But prior to my marriage, and at least for the first quarter of a century, ever since I really started dealing with women, I had those issues. Had a lot of those issues.
I see sort of like a reverse of the Great Migration. So like the Great
Hmm.
Migration, they actually had a special about this on PBS. I think with
Hmm.
Henry Louis Gates Jr. Doing the narration about the influx of black people from the South up to like the North and stuff like that. I kind of see that reversing now. Like I see a lot of people up north starting to go back down south for better
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah.
Um, People don't know. Like I think you had to be of sternness. Like people who are millennials and or the younger millennials, not the older ones, but the younger millennials and Gen Z don't know how tough we had it when they came to dating. There was
Oh
no
gosh.
social media. There was
Yeah.
no social media for
Mm-mm.
us. They,
Mm-mm.
look, you don't. They don't know the embarrassment of having to you have to walk up to someone and actually spit game
Yeah. Yeah. And
and
then
facing the possible rejection,
yeah.
right? And if they with their friends, man, and then
Oh yeah.
that's not even the end. That's just the beginning. So the first part is actually having the heart to walk up to someone you don't even know, tell
Hmm.
them, I find you attractive. Can I talk to you sometime and all this good stuff. Then the second part is actually calling them.
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
was harder for me. That I don't know about you, but like that was the hardest part. And then on top of that, remember we didn't have cell phones. Well, with the majority of us didn't. So you
Yeah.
had the big, like in most black families, you probably had the phone with the long ass extension that could
Yeah.
wrap all the way around the house.
Yeah. We had
And
one
you
of
get on
those.
the phone, heaven forbid, you call a girl up and you talking to her, and your mother or somebody get on the phone and tell you get the hell off the damn phone because I need to make a call.
Hmm. Yeah. We
Man,
had that because I know we had a special ringtone. I forgot what it was called, a identity ring or something, where it would ring like special to know that it was a call from me. And we
oh,
had those phones and
I
all that.
remember that.
Yeah.
I think that came later when you could get the individual. I forgot what you called that, but I remember that.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that in a long time. That you could have the individual. I forgot all about that. Yep.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
You're absolutely right about the rejections coming up. Like I watch, for example, like the Pop the Balloon show, and I know I got my parents watching it, and it's like especially my mom would look at the fact that, well, a lot of the guys on there are cold blooded, and they pop their balloon for certain whatever types of thing. But I look, growing up, it used to be the opposite. I mean, them girls, how they used to reject us used to be very vicious. You know what I mean? Very
On Pop the
vicious. And
Balloon, to me, on Pop the Balloon, the girls are more petty than the guys. Like the
yeah.
guys will usually have a good reason. Like they'll usually is usually is like they either don't find the woman attractive
Hmm.
or they don't find them wifey material. Those are two solid reasons not to want to
Hmm.
pursue further. The women will be petty.
Yeah.
They'll say, I don't they'll say something dumb like, I don't like how your shoes look,
Hmm.
or or I don't like that type of t-shirt. Like it'll be petty. It was the
And see,
pettiest
and,
stuff on top of
yeah, and see, growing up, like you were saying earlier, as guys, without the era of social media, well, at least in my experience, we didn't get that ability to come in. really fire it back like the guys do, with the females on the pop the balloon. And I can understand because it was always, well, the woman get a chance to play you first and you got to play a special game and cap and all that other stuff. So now I just see the shift with guys, they have the social media and they understand that. They can come right back and be like, well, you're not wifey material. You don't like me, but this is what I don't like about you, X, Y, Z. But then when I see from the women's standpoint, it's like a lot of them can dish, but they certainly can take. And
Oh yeah,
we had to take all that stuff coming up. Like wow, really?
they're not used to handling rejection like we are. Like we have
Yeah.
to take rejection, like, and to your point, like you said, as far as being overlooked by women, I it was sort of a mixed bag with me. Like, you know, I had my fair share of like dalliances, I guess you could say, with women back then. But I got occasional stuff, especially in Baltimore. Like they would say, "Oh, why do you sound so white?" or "You're corny," that sort of thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
the thing that every guy hates to hear back then is like, "Oh, you're corny,"
Mm-hmm.
you act white or whatever, that sort of stuff. And so I used to do the I used to do the most with trying to cover up the fact that I love being like I love nerdy stuff. Like I actually liked school, so I had to my grades started dropping because I was trying to fit in and not look like someone who actually enjoyed the stuff that everyone was ignoring. Like, or I started using more slang, um, even though like the way I naturally talk, like it was funny. Like how they say a lot of us do code switching, right?
Right.
Um, with me, it seemed like it was more reverse code switching because like I used to have one of my white friends. We used to always hang out, and then some buddies of mine came over from school, and we were all hanging out, and he talked to me. He was like, "Yo," he said, "Why are you talking differently?" I was like, "How?" he said, he said, he said, "You're talking differently with your black buddies." I'm like, "I can't tell." He's like, "Yeah, I can tell." Which is so it's
Mm-hmm.
funny. So apparently, I was reverse code switching. I was going from my I was going from my regular way to talk to Ebonics, I guess, my black vernacular. But
Right.
apparently, the way I regularly talk wasn't black vernacular. So, but yeah, it was a trip. And another thing people don't, younger folks may not be familiar with is like when you go into the clubs in the late '90s and the early 2000s. I don't know if you experienced this, but like especially like in the DC area, like your cousin will tell you. um, so nowadays, when I hear about people going to the clubs, they say they don't. From what I hear, most people don't even really dance like that. They just hang out in their little circles. Um,
Yeah.
like the women try to get the guys to buy them bottles or whatever, and
Yeah.
they hang out in their little cliques. But when we went to clubs, we were dancing. I remember, I think the first or second time I went to DC Live, it was so packed in there. Everywhere, like anywhere you move, you just started dancing with girls because it was just like back to back. Like it was literally like back to back, and like you would just start dancing with people. Now that was unique, but what I would say is that the other sort of thing about going to the club, the sort of like stress would be, walking up to a girl and you try to dance with her, and she arches her back and she looks back up at you like this,
Mm-hmm.
and you got the it's like that 10 seconds of fear of like, is she going to reject me or not? And then she started dancing. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I've been through that many times where she come back and look and she saw it was me and she like, okay, she danced. But then
It's an
sometimes
ego
it was like
booster.
you look at me and walk away. So been on that side too.
It's an ego booster because when they turn around and they look at you, they study you for like a half a second, then they smile, and then they just start dancing. That's
Yeah.
that's an ego booster. But yeah, people don't experience that today. Like they have it easy. Like we didn't have Tinder. You couldn't just sliding people's DMs on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah,
You know, they don't do the clubs for them now. I think the gym is the new nightclub now.
yeah, yeah. I
So,
know the nightclub scene down here mostly when I did go was just guys on their cell phone, women in the hookah and all that other stuff. And if there's any dancing, I just see a bunch of women just like dancing with each other, but I've never seen
mhm,
it
that's
like
what I
how
hear.
you said, yeah, like going up and really dancing and everything like that. And I'll be like, man, times have changed. Like when I went to a club, I was like, wow, man, I'm feel kind of like out of place a little bit.
Now, now the the nightlife, the club nightlife is still it's still thriving overseas, but we'll get to that later.
Okay.
So like with my channel, right? Like I was talking about manosphere issues, and just before you came on, I was saying how I had started talking about this 2 months ago, and I
Okay.
actually got a little bit. I don't know if you watch those videos, but I actually got a little bit of pushback from some of my moderators on some of the stuff I was talking about, like like I was saying how black men are expected to be stepdaddies,
Oh
and
God.
how women hit the wall, and still think they got the same opportunities as a young 21-year-old chick. And I'm like, they don't. And I was like, that should just be common sense. But I
Hmm.
got so much pushback from two of my female moderators on that. And I was like, the irony is they were both white. My black female
Hmm.
moderator, she gave me no pushback on that. But it
Hmm.
was like, it should just be common sense that like you're not going to have the same opportunities at 50 that you're going to have at 21. Like no one
Right.
is.
Right.
So like I've spoke on like sort of red pill manosphere issues before, and like when I first started the channel, I was talking about the black manosphere, and I've kind of moved as like I still talk about manosphere and red pill stuff, but I don't really call myself part of the black manosphere anymore because right around the time that I started, a lot of these people in the black manosphere started worshiping a white woman as the queen of the black manosphere. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I was like, how did
Yeah, I think I
just
know what you're talking about. Yeah.
just Pearl, what's up, Agatha? That's what
Pearly, just Pearly. Yeah.
it just
Just
Pearly
Pearly,
goes.
man.
How did she become the queen of the black manosphere who's neither a man nor black? I was like, that
Yeah.
was at that point, I was just like, nah. And shout out to Dennis Brown. He was the first one to call it out. He
Yeah.
was like, "Whoa, wrong with you guys?" And it was some
Yeah.
of, and I mean, to be honest, it was some of his buddies that had praised, that gave him her praise. I'm not gonna say who they are, but it was some of his buddies who were giving her praise, despite the fact that they were all homeboys of Kevin Samuels. And she was literally stealing all his talking points,
Hmm.
and then she stole like the idea from Fresh and Fit, like how they set up their podcast.
Hmm.
she has stole that idea and just took it to London,
Hmm.
and then had a
Yeah.
whole bunch of black British people working for her. So
Yeah, I saw that too. Because I know with the Manosphere, I followed. That's really where I started, kind of YouTube with the Manosphere and the Red Pill, and then I used to really feel what a lot of those brothers were saying until, like you said, Pearly, and then the other type of things where stuff happens to black people, and it's like, they just, I want to be a little politically correct,
I'm
but
I'm I'm
where
I'm
things,
not politically correct. So
okay, where a lot of the manosphere guys are kind of seeing the shift where he was talking about black issues, and that's really what drew me in. Started listening, but then it turned to the fact that black people are done wrong, and then you go and you start to coon and sambo, and it's like everything we do is wrong, and everything somebody else do is always right. And I'm like, well, that's not keeping it real.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
oh, absolutely.
And I'm like, nah.
Besides the Pearly things, the other thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way about the manosphere was how they were telling young black men not to go to college. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? I was
Hmm.
like, some of you got bullshit degrees from
Mm-hmm.
no-name colleges. So
Mm-hmm.
you're salty about this. So now you're telling these guys, oh no, just go to trade school. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with going to trade school. Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
but sitting there telling guys that, well, you know, higher education is too feminized now, so you guys should just go get a trade and learn to work with your hands. First of all, not everyone wants to work with their hands. That's number
Mm-hmm.
one. And
Mm-hmm.
two, if you see that higher education is becoming more and more effeminate, the way to combat that is not to leave; it's to bring in more men to challenge that.
Right. Right.
It's like it doesn't make sense to just retreat just because you see there's more considerations given for women or their ideas. It that doesn't make sense. Or saying well, or they would say if you do go, you should only get a STEM degree. Again, not everyone is geared has that inkling towards STEM degrees. I mean, I do recommend that because STEM degrees are more likely to have higher paying jobs. But I've broken that down several times in different videos. Like I actually did a whole live stream just for young people, so there was no one who could actually come in and they don't have a comment section if you do a live stream here just for minors, just so that
Yeah.
people can't come in and say any sort of creepy sort of stuff. Because
Right.
if you think some of my live streams, I get weirdos on here all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I roast them kind of badly too. But I told younger people because I've had some come on my live streams actually ask advice. I was like, yeah, go to college. I was like, but make sure you guys are getting your. I said it's not just enough to get your degree. I said I said one, you should also be making social connections, and two, you have to do those uh, what do you call the non-paying jobs again?
Oh,
I was
internships. Yeah.
yeah, internships. You have to do
Internships.
those
Yeah.
internships. And I mean, ideally, you want a paid internship, but to be honest, most of the most lucrative internships aren't paid internships because they usually lead to
Yeah.
jobs with those firms. And people
Right.
were asking me that, so I was telling these young people, look, regardless of what degree you get, you should be doing internships. See, overseas, they already know that. Like when I'm in the Philippines, for instance, like the internship is actually part of their degree. Like the last year of college for them, they have to do an internship to finish their
Mm-hmm.
degree, which leads to a job. So it makes more sense there. Whereas here, they don't tell you that, but it's something that you're supposed to implicitly know that you're supposed to be doing an internship if you plan on going into the working world right after you finish your undergrad degree. Now, if you're going on to grad school, that's a different thing. But for most people, they go right into the working world after they receive their bachelor's degree, which means you need
Yep.
to be doing some sort of internship because most of these jobs already want you to have experience when you
Oh, I had to learn
apply
that the
for it.
hard way. You know.
Oh yeah, the whole entry level job, and that's a whole aside, probably for another day. But part of that is because one, the people who put these jobs up in these online postings are lazy, and so they're not really entry level jobs, but they don't take the time to say these are entry level jobs, so they automatically get filtered into entry level job, even though they'll
Mm-hmm.
say we want 5 years of experience. Like, how's someone supposed to have 5 years experience? They just graduated.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
That never
The
made
other
sense to
reason
me.
they the other reason they're doing that is because they trying to squeeze people, and they know that there are a few desperate people who might actually have a master's degree who would be, for whatever financial dire straits they're in, will still take a $15 an hour job, which is absurd to think that someone with a master's degree would want to take a $15 an hour job. But
Mm-hmm.
they know that they know as long as there's desperate people out there, they can post that stuff and someone's going to apply for it. But that's another subject. But yeah, so you know, that was one of the things that annoyed me about the Black Manosphere was telling brothers and these young guys, look, listen and look up to some of these people in the manosphere, especially some of the bigger name people. And the messed up thing about this was mostly all the guys saying this have degrees themselves, and they're telling these other men or these teenage boys, forget getting a degree, just go out and learn a trade. I'm like, how dare you tell somebody not to get something that you got for yourself, just because it
Yeah.
didn't work out for you. I'm not gonna call out anyone in particular, but just because you got a communications degree and it didn't work out for you, now you started working at the post office. That's your fault. Like,
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
again, I'm not gonna call out who that is, but like, but yeah, it's like you got one of the most useless bachelor's degrees. That, like, our parents made fun of that. That's how much communication is a joke.
Yeah.
Not that it's necessarily a bad degree, but my own definition of a bullshit degree is a degree in a field in which you don't need the degree to go into that field to get that job.
Yeah. Well, I know
So
growing up because I got a master's, but the two fields that I really majored in, I got my bachelor's actually in accounting and my master's is in information systems. So going through school, I had to be real selective as far as, I had to do an assessment. I was like, what is this degree really going to do for me. So I had to kind of bite the bullet to say, you know what, in the business curriculum, I'm not just going to take business. I'm going to go for one of the hardest majors in business, which is accounting. And it's like, it was hard, it was tough, but right after I got out of college, I was able to get a job, and I've been in the field ever since. And when I hear, because I'm real big on education, and when I hear a lot of the manosphere kind of downgrading it,
yeah,
downplaying it, and then even they use the term educated lame. It's like, well, how could you be lame if you're educated?
right.
You know what I mean?
Because they think it's because women have kind of taken over higher education. Now they're trying to say it's lame. I'm like, it's not lame.
Yeah,
So, and like I said, and then like I said, they talk about STEM degrees, and the way people talk about STEM degrees is kind of wrong headed. Because
yeah,
like I was telling people before, not all STEM degrees are equal. Like, science degrees are STEM, but they're useless unless you go on to graduate school. Like, you
right,
can't do anything with a bachelor's in general biology,
right.
or I like most undergrad science degrees only prepare you for one of two things: either to teach or to be a research assistant. And most research assistants jobs don't pay well. Most people use that to pay for school while they're on it, while they're
Yeah.
in graduate school. And it's like, really, if you were talking about STEM, you're either talking about basically the engineering or something in information or computer science. That's pretty
Right,
much it. But
right.
undergrad science degrees are, speaking of one who has one, are useless unless you take on to grad school. Um, then on the other hand, there are non-STEM degrees which are lucrative. Again, business isn't considered STEM, but if you come out of business school with, like you said, accounting, um, finance, or probably advertising and marketing, those are probably good degrees. And again, it's all about doing internships. So that's
Yeah,
that's what I tell people.
yeah.
Like, the talk on STEM degrees is sort of wrong-headed, and then the sort of disdain for anything in the humanities is 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 misguided as well. Because there are some humanities degrees that are lucrative. Now there may
Hmm.
be the catch is it may not be that many positions for them, but for the positions that are open, they do pay well. Like,
Right.
there may not be very many positions for art history, but if you
Yeah.
get into a job with art history, that pays pretty well.
Right. And just like when I was in college, taking psychology and sociology, I always thought, I'm an accounting major. What I need that shit for? But going to corporate America and really seeing the psychology of how to deal with people, especially asshole managers, now it's like, oh, I can see the common need for some of these humanities. You know what I'm saying? So to me, you know, College has been a big part of me. That's why I was able to come and be successful in my major and everything. But it's all about sitting down and planning and really seeing if you take this, can you go out and do something with it? you know, you know.
Exactly. Like, so my second degree is one that was pilloried for a long time, as one of the useless humanities degrees. Like one is like usually they always talk about art history, English, and
Hmm.
then
Yeah,
philosophy. But then, flash forward 20 years later, there were people all in Silicon Valley saying you need a philosophy degrees because we need you guys to learn how to train our AI.
yeah. Hmm.
So now, so you actually had people in Silicon Valley who have degrees in like software engineering and computer science going back to school learning philosophies so,
Yeah.
so that
At,
they could be more marketable at their jobs, or they
at
were
one
hiring
point, I
people straight out of
considered.
college with philosophy degrees.
Yeah. At one point, considered
What was
going
that?
back and studying. At one point, I was considering going back and studying philosophy, philosophy, psychology, and sociology.
My bad, I just froze. What did you say?
Yeah, I said at one point I considered going back and taking psychology or sociology. Well, I see here an echo.
It's good on my end. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I actually did a triple major. I started off in psychology, then added philosophy, then added linguistics. When I first came into college, I was going to do business management. So for all the people in the chat room, don't do anything that ends in management. Anything that either ends in management or in studies is a bullshit degree, as far as I'm
Hmm.
concerned. Because what it just why does it why does it have to be management? Like business management, family studies, gender studies is the one they make fun of nowadays. And gender studies deserves to be made fun of because that is a very useless degree. I don't know what's more useless, gender studies or some places now that have a social media degree. Like there are there are now colleges that have a degree in social media. I'm like, really? So
When you say management, you're right because my master's is information systems management, and I was.
well, on the
It's
master's
like every
level,
time I went and got an IT job, I tried. They just said that my master's really didn't mean anything.
well, no, I think on a master's level is different. I'm talking about like specifically on the undergrad level because you have a lot of things like health management or family management. Now, I think it means more on the master's level because at that level you at that level is usually for someone who specifically needs that degree to get the promotion. Because like some jobs will actually send you back to school to get those master's degrees. Those I don't consider useless. I'm talking about like usually on the undergrad level, and it's like it's really not. They're really not useful because usually, like I said, it's something like business management or health management or something goofy like that. And it's like, why are you taking a management level coursework on the undergrad level? To me, that doesn't make sense. On a master's level, it does because usually management refers to someone on a professional level, which would make sense um, for a master's. Just like say like in the military, um, in some places in the military, they expect you to go to school and get like a master's level degree. Like you'd be surprised. Like a lot of people don't know this, but Army Special Forces, like if you want to get to the higher NCO levels, like like a first sergeant or or a sergeant major or something like that, they
Hmm.
expect you to have a master's degree to get to that higher level, and that's non-commissioned. So a lot of jobs when you hit that professional level, they do want you to get that master's level. Um, So that makes sense, but on the undergrad level, to me, it sounds pretentious taking anything ending in management.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, for you, like information science management, that makes sense because I actually considered that. At have you heard of UMGC?
Hmm.
You've probably seen the commercials because they work a lot with the military, and I saw a lot of their the degrees. They had like software engineering, and they would have different tracks. They would have like the management track, or um, I forgot what others, but it makes sense because for a lot of these people, I guess it would gear them towards like a job that's not simply entry level. Because for a lot of those cybersecurity jobs, like the entry level is basically working at a call center or something like that, right? Like a help desk.
Well, I know my
Well, I know
biggest.
my biggest.
Well, I have an
Well, I have
echo.
an echo.
I'm trying to figure out
Trying to
how to
figure
get
out
rid of
how to
it.
get rid of it.
One second.
One second. Are you on YouTube? Because sometimes it might create an echo.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
I'm on the link
I'm
that
on
you
the
sent.
link that you sent. Oh no, it like usually like so if someone's actively watching themselves on YouTube as they're on live stream, it might create like a feedback.
Well, let me see.
Well, let
I
me
don't think
see.
I
I
am.
don't think I am.
Let me see.
Let me see. Usually I don't have a problem with it because, but the difference is I'll be watching on my TV. I'm not watching on my computer, so I don't get a feedback from my TV from my phone because I'll play like music in the background.
Yeah, I'm not on
Yeah, I'm not
YouTube.
on YouTube. Okay, no, so it might just be a technical thing.
Yeah,
So
I'm
yeah,
gonna
if
see
you
if I
I'm gonna
can
see if I
maybe
can maybe
log off and log
log
back
off and
on.
log back on. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, I'm gonna try
Yeah,
that.
I'm gonna try that. All right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. He had a little glitch, so he's gonna be right back. But for anyone coming into the chat room, again, this is my guest, Ty. We're talking about Black Masculinist issues. Okay. All right. Is that better?
It's still here.
It's
I'll
still
deal
here.
with
I'll deal with it. It's not too bad on my end. So usually on my end, if I don't hear the feedback, then the audience doesn't either. Like the since my like if it's coming on your end, it might be through your system.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
I'm Let me ask the chat. Agatha, do you hear any echo? I think Agatha's still here. One of my oldest moderators here. Not old in age, but like oldest as
Oh,
far as like been on here for a long time. I had one moderator. She was mad cool. Like I met her last summer. She's actually in Germany, or former moderator, and then we just had a falling out because I guess we didn't see eye to eye as far as religious ideas and stuff like that. And that was kind of weird to me because it was like you kind of known for like a year now that I'm not a religious person, and like I actively preach skepticism, and it's like I didn't understand the falling out about religious ideas and stuff like that. But stuff happens.
yeah.
Yeah,
Things happen,
things
especially when it
happen,
come down to
especially when it come
religion
down
and
to religion
politics.
and politics.
Mm.
But the thing is, we like the weird thing was it wasn't like I was bashing on her beliefs or anything. She was just asking me, you know, would I be interested in some of those things she was talking about? I was like, not really. And she's like, well, have you tried? I'm like, no. Why would I? But she's a sweet person. She's very talented. She's actually a full musician in her own right. But because of her health issues, she hasn't been able to actually, um, I guess, fulfill her musical career the way she would like, um, which is weird.
Um,
But but anyways, getting back to what we were saying. So yeah, like one of the things, like I said, I definitely disagree with the manosphere was like them telling young brothers, um, college is a waste of time for them. Instead, they should learn a trade. Um, and that was one of the things I disagree with Kevin Samuels about too. Like he didn't say now, at least he didn't bash college. He just told people it would be a waste of time unless you're getting a STEM degree. And
Hmm.
again, I disagree with that too because if you like, I've said this before. Like if you go to an elite university, it doesn't matter what your degree is in. Like, and that's the difference. If you go to a no name school, right, then it matters what you get a degree in because now the the value of the degree is going to be based on what you studied. But if you go to an elite university, the value of your degree is in the name from which you've earned the degree from, right? So
Right.
if you go to like if you go to if you graduated from Harvard or Yale or somewhere a college of that nature, it doesn't matter what you studied. You could have had a bachelor's in anime. It wouldn't matter. All people are gonna see is that it says from Harvard. Like they're not gonna care that it was in anime. But if you're coming from like if you're coming from a school lesser known like Morehouse, then yeah, you probably want to get a degree in something that's going to be useful. So I would say that flight. So for any of the brothers or sisters going to a HBCU, I would say pursue a STEM degree because you can't
Yeah.
really you really can't go off the prestige of your college coming from an HBCU. Not to say that those schools aren't good, because Howard is a very good school, for instance, and Morehouse, but they're not well known outside of the black community.
Yeah. Because I know,
Because I know,
down here
down
we
here we
surrounded by
surrounded by
HBCUs.
HBCUs.
Morehouse, Spelman,
Morehouse, Spelman,
Clark, Atlanta.
Clark, Atlanta.
I mean, they're good
I mean, they're good
schools down
schools
here.
down here.
And when I
Yeah.
first,
And when
because
I
I
first,
used to
because I
work
used to
down there,
work down
and
there, and
when I first got the
when I first
job,
got the job,
because I used to
because
work
I
at
used to work at
Morehouse,
Morehouse,
and I know that was
and
the
I know
big
that was the
thing
big
coming
thing
with
coming with
everybody there talking
everybody there
about they had
talking
the
about they had the
HBCUs,
HBCU,
and then in the
and then the
conversation is like,
conversation
where
is like,
did I
where
go? I
did
went to
I go? I
Temple,
went to Temple,
so it's
so
like
it's
it's a
like
whole
it's
different
a whole
dynamic
different
with that
dynamic with that
HBCU
HBCU
versus something
versus
like Temple,
something like
you
Temple,
know.
you know. Right. I almost went to Temple because like you said, you're from Philly. I used to live in Philly for a short while. I'm not originally from Philly, but I did live
Hmm.
there for almost a year. And then we moved between Baltimore and Delaware, like Bear, Delaware, like right outside of Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, like everyone from Delaware pretends they're from Philly, so it was funny. So like living in Philly to see all these people in Delaware pretending they from Philly, I'm like, come on. Maybe some of them were originally born there, but it's like it's like people from Prince George's County all claiming they from Southeast DC. Like,
Yeah.
knock it out, guys. Yeah. But yeah, I live in Philly. I went to what's the high school? Because they changed their name. Um Parkway. Is it Parkway? Parkway Gamma.
Parkway.
Parkway. They dropped the Gamma part off, but it's called. Is it Parkway? But and I only got into that because my aunt was on a city council and she was sorority sisters with the principal.
Okay.
Okay. Otherwise, I would have been going to Western Philadelphia High School, and my aunt when she found it, she was like, "Oh no, you're not going to Western Philadelphia High School." She was like,
West
She was like,
Philly.
"That West place is Philly,
West
yeah,
Philly High.
West Philly High, yeah."
Or
Because I was in
okay.
walking distance from there.
Okay. So you was
So
in
I
West
didn't go to
Philly.
West school. Philly, yeah.
Oh.
Oh. And she was like, you're not going to West Philadelphia High School," which is bad because I'm a suburban kid. I'm like in the hood now, so that probably wouldn't have. She was right. That probably would have been a rough way.
Well,
Well,
I
when
went to
I
Catholic
went to
school
Catholic school
for like
for
nine
like
years,
9 years,
and then the
and
last
then the
three I
last
had to go
three I
to the
had to go to the
Philadelphia public
Philadelphia
school,
public school,
and that was a
and
hard
that was a
transition
hard
for me.
transition for me.
Because I was just
Because I
used
was
to
just used to
structure,
structure,
going to
going to
class,
class,
But then when I went to public school and saw that there was no structure and you could cut class at will, I got caught up and I almost failed in 10th grade.
Wow. Yeah, it isn't weird. Like, I think this only happens to black kids. Like, you'll take young black boys who love academics, and by the time they get to high school, like, we start messing up because we try
Hmm.
to fit in, and all sorts of stuff that kind of go against you succeeding. Like, we have so many things working against us. And then on top of that, if you still are like vested in your academic interests, then like the girls are shitting on you. Like, he's corny. Like,
Well, I
yeah.
was ultimate corn. I was in Air Force Junior ROTC. That was ultimate cornball high school I went to.
I'm trying to remember if we had ROTC and
West Philly, I think. Well, no,
ROTC at Milford Mill. I think
I don't think so. Because I know one of our rival unions was West Philly High. They had it there. Because we used to go to the military ball and compete with them in competitions. So West Philly High was like our biggest competitor.
see, like, I think it's Parkway. I'm probably gonna get off the live and then see the name. Like, oh, I butchered the name, but it was like it was a magnet school.
Yeah.
It was a magnet school, and I think there's multiple ones now. But back then, when I went there in the ninth grade, they had just relocated to that new location, which was in walking distance. And like I said, it was a culture shock living in West Philly. Like, I told people when I came back here that it used to be so many crack vials on the street that I was like, if I actually lost, I said, if I ever got lost on my way home, I could just line up all the crack vials and find my way back home. That's how bad it was. Like, it was bad. And then, like I said, the school was good, but because it was on a new campus, it wasn't properly set up yet. Like, we didn't have lunch. Like, so when it was like lunchtime, they would just give us all like a slice of Domino's pizza or something like that, and
Yeah.
I think like a soda, because they didn't have the cafeteria set up. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Hmm.
It's like no lunch. So either you brought your own lunch or you got your little. They gave you your little ticket so that you get a
Hmm.
slice of pizza and a soda, which was horrible.
But I think all the time when I transitioned from Catholic school to public school and had to deal with the culture shock and everything, now that I think about it, that kind of helped me in life to be able to step out my comfort zone a little bit and go into tough situations and know how to handle it. Because to move down here to Atlanta is not always easy. Because down here, the hardest part for me was just adjusting to the traffic and learning the environment. But then I stayed here and toughed it out because of all my experiences growing up, especially transitioning from Catholic school to public school. And, the structure, things being out of place, that really taught me a lot in life, to be able to not be afraid of new things, you
I
know.
think I learned to adapt early on just because we move so much.
Uh
Like,
huh.
we, as a kid, like, I moved from Baltimore City to Baltimore County when my mother moved to Illinois. And a year later, I moved to Illinois as well and stayed there for about 5 years. We came back briefly to Baltimore County because my mother and her husband at the time were having issues. Then we moved
Hmm.
back to Illinois for another year. Then we came back to Baltimore County. Then we moved to Philly, came back to Baltimore County, then moved to Delaware, then back to Baltimore County. And then they was like, well, you got to finish school in Delaware unless you want to stay with your father. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to stay with my father. And then I moved to the DC area. And so I was just so used to moving back and forth between schools. Like I went to three different high schools.
Hmm.
That just learning how to adapt became kind of easy. But it messed up your social life and your academics because every school had different requirements, and it that messed up my grades a bit. And then trying to fit in three different locales between DC, Baltimore, and Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was trying. But like I said, black kids, particularly black boys, have it stacked against them when it comes to succeeding academically. Now and again, to talk about overseas, I know like from my African friends, it's completely different over there. Like over there, the cool kids are the ones who are doing well in school. Like the girls want the guys who are doing well because they know, because those girls are smarter. They know the guys doing well are the ones who are gonna have good jobs when they leave school.
Yeah.
Yeah. The chicks here are dumb. Like they want the dope boys. Well, not all of them, but you know what I'm saying.
Hmm.
But they want the bad boys because they're cool here now. But like my father used to tell me, like, yeah, those are gonna be the guys working at the gas station, after you leave school, and he was right because one of them literally was when I was in school. Like he was like he wasn't pumping gas, I don't think, but he was like a mechanic or whatever, and he was younger than me and he looked like he had aged like 5 years older than me. He's like, man, I should have been more like you. He's like,
And one thing
and one
about
thing
me, I
about
heard
me, I
about,
heard about,
but I was just
but
going
I
to
was
be
just gonna
me
be
regardless of what they
regardless of
thought.
what they
Because
thought,
I was in
because I
that
was in that
thing too,
thing too,
wanting the bad
wanting the
boys
bad
and looking
boys
at me
and
as
looking
a
at me
nerd
as a
and a geek
nerd
and
and a
all that.
geek and all that,
But I always
but I
stayed real
always
to
stayed
who I
real to who
was.
I was,
And I'm glad I
and I'm
did,
glad I did.
you know?
I guess because I moved around so much, and it kind of hurt every time I had to like lose friends. Because again, no social media, no internet back then. So
Hmm.
it's not like that. That's one thing I wish we had back then. It's like something like Facebook where I could stay in touch with friends from all the different places I live between Delaware, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Maryland, you know, stuff like that. Where now, and I have friends that I know from the other side of the world that I stay in touch with.
Hmm.
But yeah, back then it's like when you moved, that was pretty much the end of that your social world. You had to start a whole new, circle.
Yep.
Yep. Because of that, I think that's probably what made me cut up more is because I felt like I had to try harder to fit in since I was always having to readjust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm
And I'm
a victim
a
of that
victim of
too.
that too.
The thing what
The
I really
thing what
like
I really
about
like
today,
about
especially
today,
social
especially
media,
social media,
is that I can
is that
connect
I
with
can connect with
people
people
more
more
like-minded.
like-minded.
Because
Mm-hmm.
growing up,
Because
I was
growing up,
always
I was always
around
around
people
people
that wasn't
that
like
wasn't
mine, and I
like
was
mine, and
forced
I
to
was
hang out
forced to
with them
hang out with them.
because of my
Because of
environment.
my environment.
But now,
But
what I
now,
really
what
like
I really
about
like about
YouTube and social
YouTube and
media is
social media is
I can connect with
I can
people
connect
who
with
think
people
like
who
me,
think like me,
and we can share
and we can share
experiences,
experiences,
bounce things off of
bounce
each
things
other.
off of each other. Mm-hmm.
I tell my
I
cousin
tell
that
my
all the
cousin
time.
that all the time. And so my third gripe with the Black Manosphere, I'm getting my gripes out first, because then I want to talk about the good stuff. Because
Yeah.
yeah, but to be fair, I'm putting out all the bad stuff because people are like, if you only talk about one or the other, everyone's gonna have something to say, right? If you only talk about the
Right.
good stuff, people have something to say. If you only talk about the bad stuff, people gonna have something to say. So I'm getting both sides out. So, but my third, so my third gripe with the Black Manosphere is how they protect degenerates. Like there's certain folks, people I even looked up to in the Manosphere, the way they try to protect Puffy last year. And I'm like,
Hmm.
why are y'all going out your way to protect him? And it's like, well, because he's part of the black elite and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, so he's a fucking
Hmm.
degenerate. Excuse my
Hmm.
language. But it's like, then it's like, well, some of you are just haters. That's why y'all don't. That's why y'all making fun of him. I'm like, no, we're not. I was like, this dude has been problematic since the start of his career, especially if you're Gen X or you're older millennial who known Puffy since you were a little kid. Like I remember when he came out in '91, and he's always had issues. And like even back then, we all knew he was a bit fruity. Like that
Hmm.
was we no one said it, but it, he, it was was a little zesty back then.
Hmm.
But back then you could
Yeah.
get away with that. But yeah, I mean, because I told people I was like, I remember the first time I ever seen Puffy was in an R&B group called Fine Young Cannibals, and he was in a little bodysuit as a background dancer, and I was like, yeah, that was a little zesty. I was like, mind you, it was when he came out in the little rhinestone suits and stuff like that. But it's like following his career, he had issues like when he threw a celebrity basketball event, someone got shot and unalived.
Hmm.
There was another event that he threw someone else again, life was taken from them. Um, and then people was like, well, you we should support black male regardless whether they do wrong or right because it's because you got to be on code. I'm like, that would be cool if Puffy was on code, but he was never on code. I was like, he destroyed how many black men's lives, either career wise or like literally their lives ended. I mean, Tupac, Biggie, Shine, Mace,
Hmm.
Loon, um, what's Mario Winans, and so on. Like, and there's other brothers. I'm like, I'm not gonna be on code for someone who wasn't on code for brothers himself. Like, please. And I
Hmm.
was like, he brought that stuff on himself. Like, it's like you're in your 50s and you're still trying to party like you're in your 20s. I was like, this isn't the 80s and 90s where you can just do dirt and you know it won't get around. We're in the era of social media. You don't think stuff like this will get leaked and you still trying to have these little freak offs and stuff like it's the 90s. Like Russell Simmons and Andre Harrell could get away with that because they did that stuff back in the 80s and 90s before there were any cameras.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like you can't do that now. And it's like people's like, oh, you're just hating and this and that. And then people saying, well, he didn't get charged with anything. I was like, that's because you idiots don't know how law enforcement works. I was like, you're thinking of, I was like, this is not CSI or Law and Order. I said, the feds are going to let you keep doing your dirt until they build up enough evidence because they only coming after you once they have enough that they'll make it stick. I was like, they're working at a higher tier than local law enforcement. I was like, I was like, I don't know why people were surprised that he was going to eventually get charged with something. I was like, your, if they raid your houses, it's not over. It's definitely not over. And it's not they didn't raid one of his houses. They raided all of his mansions. There was one in LA they raided, there was one in Miami they raided, and there was one in New York they raided. And they told him when he was in the while he was in the Caribbean that you can't fly off anywhere. You got to stay put. Now, that should have been just common sense that he was in trouble.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, yeah, they didn't charge him with anything. I was like, yeah. I was like, y'all don't know how federal law enforcement works. I said, besides that, y'all don't realize if they raided if they raided that man's house, that already meant they have an insider
Yeah.
because they had someone there to tell them when to go, what to find, or who's going to be there. I'm like, and this was done by Homeland Security, along with FBI and I think U.S. Marshal Service. I was like, the last time that happened, that was R. Kelly, and last thing I seen, he's still in prison. So, and you see right now they're about to go to trial with him. So it's not looking good. And like once the Cassie video came out, then a lot of people in the Black Manosphere switched their tune. They was like, oh yeah, I guess he is guilty. I'm like, yeah, no shit.
Hmm.
I was like, you think they raided his mansions just because the dumb justification was they were just trying to flex on him and intimidate him. I was like, you really think federal law enforcement is gonna waste time as much, not to mention millions of dollars of taxpayer money, just to flex on someone and intimidate them? I I was like, no, if they come and raid your house, federal raids, I was like, if DHS comes to do federal raids, they got something bad on you.
Hmm.
They're not gonna waste manpower on something like that just to flex on a celebrity. That's
Yeah.
that doesn't that didn't make sense. So when the manosphere was saying that dumb stuff, I'm like, I said, you guys are really reaching.
Hmm.
So
I just seen a
those,
shift in the manosphere over time, you know.
yeah, and even a lot of them themselves have said that it has degraded over time. Because one is like, I've said this myself before. Like after Kevin's passed away, it was sort of like the death of Superman. Like I said, after the death of Superman, you had all these little wannabes in the. I don't know if you ever read those comic books, but they have an animated version. So when Superman died fighting Doomsday, or we thought he died, there were all these copies of him. There was like a Superboy, there was a cyborg Superman, there was the black superhero that's still around now, Steel, another character, and they were all supposed to take the reign of Superman after he left, and they called it the reign of Superman. So for an entire year in the comics, they had these guys kind of taking up the mantle after he passed away, and then you found out, that he wasn't really dead, but it's just that his readings were so low that they couldn't be detectable by human instruments. But anyway, that was sort of like the where the manosphere left off after Kevin Samuels died, was that you had all these guys who were trying to fit in his shoes but weren't quite there. That's one of the reasons why I never tried to do what he did and like get suited up and do live streams like that, because I've seen quite a few people doing that, and I was like, it looks cheesy. Like it looked like when Kevin did it, it was classy. Plus, a lot of people didn't know like a lot of stuff he was doing in the live stream, like when he was having like the scented candles and the fragrance of the day. Those were actually paid. Those were actually paid sponsors, like people
Hmm.
that had paid him to promote them on his live streams.
Yeah.
So when he was giving you the name of the fragrance or the name of those candles, they were paying him to do that.
Yeah.
Like people don't know how market savvy he was.
Hmm.
And even towards the end of before he passed away, he started um, gearing himself away from the Black Manosphere as well, becoming more mainstream. Like he appeared on the episode of ATL. He did that.
Yeah, I remember that episode.
Yeah, I watched that. It was actually pretty funny. He did I think a music video with Future. So he had a lot of stuff going on for him right before he passed away. Um, and he got, and actually a lot of the people from the Black Manosphere at the time, like they're all praising, singing his praises now. But right before he died, they were hating on him, like
Yeah. I
like
remember one
vocally.
particular YouTuber was cussing him out because he
Yeah, I think
felt that he didn't invite him to an event.
right. And then some of these people he put on, and they were talking bad about him, like Fresh and Fit. That's why I don't rock with them. Like
Yeah.
he put them on. That little fake ass Myron Gaines, who's that's not even his real name.
Hmm. I heard
Yeah,
about him.
yeah, these two tethers. Like one is a Sudanese guy, the other is like from Barbados or whatever. They were sitting there calling him gay behind his back, even though he put them on. Like their show became a success because of him. And when he came to do their show, he flew out on his own dime. They didn't pay him to come on his show.
Yeah.
He came there on his own. Like he flew down to Miami, did their show. He did that with a few people, by the way, and that's crazy that they flipped on him. Then on top of that, then they started competing with him, like purposefully putting their live stream at the same time that his was up
Hmm.
to compete with him. So
And I saw all that, it's like after he died, that's when everybody kind of wanted to know, well, Kevin was my friend and everything. But like you said, I noticed the shift. And when he got big, it seemed like them brothers got jealous,
mhm.
you know.
They definitely
And
did, because some of them were saying, well, oh, he stole our talking points, And yeah, he did use some people's talking points, but for one, he did you oftentimes he would give praise where praise was due, and then he never. And then the other thing is he never pretended like these were stuff that he invented.
Yeah.
So for the high value man thing, he he repeatedly said, "I did not come up with this concept. This is a concept from the '80s." He
Hmm.
said he just put his own spin on it, but like a lot of his talking points, he never claimed that he invented those things himself. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like he was plagiarizing.
And a lot of
And
times
a
I
lot of
thought
times I thought
that
that
I mean, even though
even though
I have my
I
different
have my different
interpretation of a high
interpretation
value
of a
man,
high value man,
to me,
to
I don't
me,
really put
I don't really
like he
put
was saying
like
like you
he
got
was
to make
saying
over
like you
six
got to make
figures
over
and all
six
that.
figures and all that.
But I grew up in a
But I grew up
household
in
where
a
a father,
household where a father
he didn't make
he
six
didn't make
figures, but he
six
showed
figures, but he
me
showed
the high
me the
value
high
just by how
value
he took
just
care of
by
his
how he
family.
took care of his family.
You
So
know
and
how he
so
raised us.
how he raised us. So I was telling your cousin about that too. So I was telling him, so what Kevin Samuels meant by high value, like, so I think a lot of people confuse it because, like I said, most of the people who disagree with him on the high value concept probably never watched a whole segment of him explaining it.
Hmm.
So his high value thing, he said the financial component is a necessary condition of it because I mean that was the concept, coming all the way from the '80s, like 40 years ago. So he was like, usually that's about like someone who makes about 10,000 a month, give or take, which is probably more than that now, but at least 10,000 a month, uh, give or take, um, the amount depending on your state. And but he was saying it's a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient. Like there's still other things that had to be about it, but the financial component had to be because high value wasn't. It was talking about. It was referring to financial worth, not to a
Hmm.
person's. It didn't mean your intrinsic worth, and I think a lot of people took that offense that he was talking about a person's intrinsic worth. He was talking about their financial worth or their worth to their overall worth to society at large. So he was like, so basically, you're taking someone who's making at least 120,000 a year or more, and they have to be making it for like 3 to 5 years. Like it's not so. You can't just be someone making. You just started making this money. He said you're a high earner, or what he called a Henry. Um, high earner, not rich yet. He called that a Henry. And he said, you have blue collar Henrys and you have white collar Henrys. But he was saying, so you have to be making at least 10,000 a month. Um, and this had to be for like 3 to 5 years. And he said the job in which you are making this income has to be on a LinkedIn level. So you can't be a drug dealer or an app. Like, so if you're in like a drug dealer, an athlete, or entertainer, you don't count. Like he said that like this does. He was very hard. He was like this. Most celebrities he said will don't count as high value men. He said
Hmm.
because they're not. They didn't earn their money the hard way. He said most of these high value men had to grind to get to where they were, and most of them don't started probably don't start making their money till they're like in their late 30s to mid 40s, maybe even early 50s. So that was the other part. Then he was saying, you know, on top of the money, on top of making it 3 to 5 years, on top of the job having to be something on a LinkedIn level, then you also have to be recognized as high value by other high value men. That's another thing. And the fifth thing was you have to be considered uh, sort of an asset to your community. He said there was also a moral component to it as well, but he never went into specifics over that just because he probably didn't want to, push his own, you know, um, moral views on people. But he was saying there was a moral component as well. But those were the five aspects. Is like you had to be making at least 10,000 every month. You had to be making it for 3 to 5 years consistently. It has to be through a LinkedIn level sort of job. Like it has to be. You can't just say I'm an entrepreneur. Like it has to be something that someone can actually point to and say what that is. Like oh, this person is um, a network manager for Cisco or something like that, right? Um, he said 4, you had to be recognized as a high value man by a community of other high value men. And he said, in the fifth part is you have to be seen as some sort of like asset uh, to the community. So that's what he meant by high value men. But the other thing he always told people is not everyone has to be high value, and and so that was one of the things I think other people confuse. He wasn't telling everyone the only way to be worthwhile is to be a high value man. He was saying it's good enough to be average men. And what he kept getting on the women for is the fact that they all kept saying they want high value men. Hey, and he was like, "You're an average woman. You should be looking for an average man."
Average
Because
at
he was like,
best.
how? Because
Favorite thing.
he's like, how dare you, uh, you know, a chubby woman, 35 years old, with a kid, never been married, so expecting some guy making like 300,000 a year, like what? You know,
I
so
remember that show. You told that woman that.
yeah, so it's like, although he talked about high value men, he never said that he never said that all of us should be trying to be high value men, because he said by definition everyone can be a high value man, because that's sort of like the modern day nobleman. Like most people aren't gonna fit that criterion. He said, and not everyone should try to fit that criterion. He said it's fine just being an average man. He was
Hmm.
like, but these women will try to tell you that you can't be. He was like, he was saying, here's the realness of it is the way some of these American women are. He said some of y'all just shouldn't get married because you you're not gonna they're simply not gonna choose you. And this is how the passport bro uh, movement came out because of this. So Kevin used to tell people you're not going, because he saw the passport bro movement growing when when he was still alive, and he tried to downplay it because he was trying to keep black relationships together.
Yeah.
And everyone in the passport bro movement, like myself, like fuck black relationships. I'm trying, I'm going where
Yeah.
I want to be.
Yeah.
And he kept saying, well, you guys can't get passport. He said most of y'all ain't gonna be able to travel, which is just false. Because first of all, a passport costs less than a pair of Jordans,
Hmm.
and the only two reasons you can't get a passport, well, three reasons really, but the only two reasons is if you are either convicted of international narcotics trafficking or treason. Outside of that, it doesn't matter what your legal background is, you can get a passport.
Yeah.
And as far as whether those certain countries will let you in, that's a different that's a different subject. But basically, anyone can get a passport if you're not convicted of international narcotics trafficking or treason, and unfortunately, child you don't have back child support. If you have back child support, um, but he was trying to keep black relationships together, so he was trying to talk down the whole passport bro thing because he knew that that was going to grow. And his thing was he was trying to keep black relationships together, and and despite that, women were hating on him. The very people he was trying to help
Yeah. I saw
were
that.
shitting on him. When he died, the way they just just talked about that man, it that soured me so much on
Man,
black women at the time.
I ain't
They were
see that
literally
much
like
victory all
they were
until he
laughing.
died. I seen it was just vicious.
And I was like, they don't even realize he was like their last hope, because the guys younger than us, the Gen Zs,
Hmm.
my nephews, man, they the way they talk about black girls,
Yeah.
they like most of them have had it. Like I have never seen like when I used to go to Milford Mill, when me and your cousin went, I never saw guys just openly dating white women, like white girls. That they don't care now. Like
Hmm.
they be with Maria, with Becky. It wasn't like that back then. I
No.
mean, it happened, but not as openly. Like it was open when I went to DC, because like the Washington suburbs is more of a more multicultural, more multi ethnic. But here in Baltimore, where it's more segregated, you rarely saw that like that. So now,
Yeah,
yeah,
it
it's
was like
changed.
that a
But like
little
I
bit
said,
in my high school because I went to Northeast Philly and we saw it more up there. But with the racism up there, it's like they can you can date in the day, but at nighttime when he went home to mother and father, nah, they ain't know us.
so yeah, the high school I went to in Philly, it was diverse, but like that's because it was a magnet program. So we had Asians, we had Latinos, white people,
Yeah.
everyone. Like one of the friends I met, like another person I lost contact with when I moved, was an Irish kid. He and I were mad cool, and he even told me, he's like, man, I'm just gonna warn you. He was like, he's like, if you hang out with me, I just want to let you know that my family is sort of in the Irish mafia. So he's like,
Hmm.
my uncle has a vendetta against my father, so he wants to, I can't say, unalive me to get back at my
Yeah.
father. So he said it's gonna be a risk. And I was like, it's all good, man. So I don't know. I'm if I said that then, I would not have been hanging with someone now, knowing what I know now about organized crime. Like, but yeah, so it was so he and I, we formed a little clique. It was me, him, another black kid, a Filipino kid, another white kid. Um, but it was diverse. But as far as the dating, it still seemed like mostly everyone stayed to their own in Philly. But like I said, in DC, it was you had the same diversity, but everyone was dating everyone. Like it wasn't until I went to DC I knew that like girls actually liked me. Like having like Vietnamese girls and Panamanian girls come up to me. I'm like, whoa.
That wasn't happening
like
in
like
Philly.
yeah, man. Yeah, oh yeah, I know. Like the Vietnamese stuck to themselves. Like there were Vietnamese biker gangs in Philly back then. I remember.
Yeah.
Like it was so much. It was so much organized crime back then, man. Yeah, yeah. The Vietnamese gangs. You had the JBM. I don't know if they're still around.
Yeah.
Then you had the Dominicans and all, but yeah, it was crazy. So, but like I said, it it was a lot. Like even though it was a magnet program, so you got people from all over. There was friendships, but I didn't see. I didn't because I was only there like less than a year. I didn't see all the romantic side of it. But when I went to DC, everyone was dating everyone, so
Hmm.
that was cool. And that was sort of what kind of sparked that interest with women from other groups. And so that's what I would have geared towards because like um you know you have different sectors of the manosphere. You got the sort of the pro blackity black pan Africanist type folks in the black manosphere, um who think that you should only date black women to keep black families together. Like Kevin Samuels and stuff like that. Not that he's pro black, but like you have the ones who prefer brothers to only date black. Then you have again the passport bro group that's like fuck all that. Like
Hmm.
I'm going where I want to be because half of them dudes are in Colombia. Like people don't even these women they would be even more mad at us if they knew just how many brothers are probably sitting in right now in customs waiting to get through it in Colombia right now in Cartagena or Medellin. Like, it's so many of them. It's ridiculous. Like, I prefer to fly overseas to Asia, but most of the brothers in the passport bro group, they go down to Latin America, particularly the DR and Colombia, because you can go there for the weekend and come back, during the week.
Yeah.
And it's like as cheap as flying to like California.
Wow. So,
And people don't know
over the
that.
last
Yeah, you can get
5
it. You can
years,
book
I've
a trip to
seen
Colombia.
that movement just take off. Passport bros, and also there was another one. Was it Save Yourself, Black Men? You
Yeah,
familiar
I
with
used
them?
to talk about that as well. So
Uh-huh.
Save Yourself Black Men is related. Oh, before I get to let me Agatha asked me a question. She said, "How is it?" She said, "How is it leaving?" your friends behind in your home state. Well, I think I addressed that, but like I said, it sucked because like even when I moved back, sometimes I didn't find those friends again. Like the white friend I mentioned earlier, who was asking me why I had switched the way I had talked around my black friends. When I moved to Philly, um, he was one of my friends that I lost because when I came back, I couldn't find him again. So that it kind of sucks. So that's why I think I became more of a class clown or whatever when I in school because I was always trying to fit in to try to have friends. But getting back to what we were saying, so save yourself, black man, the SYSBM. Actually, I don't know if you've seen a few videos. I actually had my wife say it on the video, and I put it on. I put it. I put it on the end of my video, and I'm gonna give a shout out to Richie Mack from Zuna, Thailand. I got that from him because he would have his girlfriend L say that, and it's funny because she says it in her accent. She's like, "Say yourself, back man." I would cry like my wife. She doesn't have an accent, so it doesn't sound like that. But when Richie Mack's girlfriend on Zoom to Thailand, shout out to him. Uh,
Hmm.
if you never checked out his channel, it's really good. Like the production of his channel looks like something on network cable. So he has really good, and he does it himself. He was a former actor here in America. Like he was in stuff like House Party, Hollywood Shuffle,
Hmm.
stuff like that. So he actually, he's actually well connected in Hollywood. And he even has like celebrities come on the show. He had people like Michael Jai White and Tony Jaa, Jerry, Jerry Springer before he died, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Because he was on an episode of the Wayne show, the Wayne's brothers. I don't know. It was an episode on the Wayne's brothers when they went on to Jerry Springer. He was one of the people on the Jerry Springer show with them.
Hmm.
So that's how he knows Jerry Springer. So he has a really good channel. He's one of those guys that really opened up the Passport Bro movement. Um, but so the Save Yourself Black Man was sort of like guys. They may or may not have been Passport Bros, but they were just guys who were basically saying, "I don't want to deal with the black community anymore, and I don't want to deal with black women." And that's where I kind of agreed for the most part because I mean, let's be honest, a large part of our community, particularly in places like the Northeast and the West Coast, uh, the, the neighborhoods are horrible. And it's like they glorify degeneracy.
Yeah.
And then the bad thing is, like I said in that one video 2 months ago, is the guys who get themselves together despite all the odds, like they're punished for their success. They're expected to come back to these communities and save these women who didn't want them.
Hmm.
They're supposed to be the cleanup men for these women who didn't want them. They had kids by Pookie and Ray Ray, and now they're supposed to raise little clock. They're supposed to raise these little bastards, little Glocktavius and Torquisha.
And I've been in
And
that
then
position before. I
and
I used to play the back when I first started the stepdaddy role. I used to um wasn't good.
someone's asking, what is the best way to get over a breakup? Um, I can't. Hold on, let me look at my pick out my glasses here. I can't tell if that's a man or woman because that's gonna change how I answer this.
It says Jazzle. Looks like,
I'm thinking that's a woman, right?
yeah, I think that's a woman. Yeah.
Okay. Was that an anime thing? I can't even tell. Well, the best way is to find someone else, basically. But I thought if it was a guy, I was gonna say go to the gym. Like, don't prioritize. Like, stop making women the focus of your world.
And I say that to my cousin all the time. As men, prioritize ourselves, get our mind right, get our body right, get our focus right. And I said
Yeah.
the women will come, but that shouldn't be the primary focus. And that's something I had to learn, you know. put
Yeah,
women
I
first, and it's like,
same here. I was a simp back in the day.
mm-hmm,
I think a lot of us used to simp. I mean, how could you like the the '90s taught black guys to be simps. Like all of our songs, you need a man with sensitivity.
mm-hmm,
Boys the Men literally had a song said "Simping ain't easy."
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I couldn't believe it because at first when my friend first showed me, I was like, "Nah, that must be a new song." He was like, "No, this is an old song," and I looked at it. It was like from like '92 and '93,
mm-hmm,
saying "Simping ain't easy." So we literally had songs teaching black dudes to be simps.
mm-hmm.
Q Sweat, every song by Q Sweat, dude literally begging on every song. Let me know.
But it wasn't till I hit rock bottom, unfortunately for me, to get myself together and kind of build myself up. And I'm glad I did. You know.
Yeah, I had a couple of red pill moments, and I mean I addressed one of them on video before. I don't know if you saw that one, but I was like, there was there was one with family, and then there was one with women, and this
Mm-hmm.
is why I have issues both with with the women in the community and with family. Like the one with family was, I was going away to college and they wouldn't support me. And on top of that, not only would they not support me, they were telling me, don't go and you're going to fail if you do. And you're too old to be going to school. Um, Me and your cousin, we talked about this a lot because he and I had a lot of similarities with this. I'm sure he probably told you as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, actively had a father telling me I'm too old to be Joe College. You need to just go on to like just have a regular job or whatever. Don't worry about college. Um, then lying to the rest of the family saying I flunked out of community college. I'm like, how did I transfer to a top university if I flunked out of community college? I said that doesn't even make sense. I said I don't know why they even believed you, but the only reason they believed you is because they didn't go to college, so they wouldn't know that that's bullshit. Um,
Yeah.
and then actively telling everyone I was gonna fail my first semester. So and that's why I keep this up on my wall. My when I made the scholars list my first semester at
Mm-hmm.
University of Maryland, because that first semester he was telling everyone I was gonna flunk out of college.
Yeah. Wow. Sometimes the people, your family, could be the ones that's detrimental.
And then and then my mother was no better. She was basically agreeing with them, saying I don't need to be going to college.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like. I had to get my cousin's uncle to bring me on to school. I had no help. And what made it worse is there was a scholarship that my grandmother's church was offering that she said I was, and I didn't know this until years later after I finished school, that apparently I had qualified for a scholarship, and but I couldn't get it myself. My mother had to claim it for me. She wouldn't do it, and I didn't learn this till years later. I'm like, wow, what? But at the same time, telling me to talk my younger sibling into going to school who had dropped out. I'm like, the audacity. And so
Mm-hmm.
I did it anyway. And then she was like, "Well, I dropped out. Why would they think I want to go on to college?" I'm like, "I get you. I'm just letting you know what they told me." And so they told me, "Well, that wasn't good enough. You need to go talk to her again." I'm like, "Yeah, no, that's crazy. Because like you wouldn't even support me. Now you're telling me to talk someone into school who dropped out."
Mm-hmm.
And then
Now, when you was in college, as a black man, did you find that you had to work super hard with everything that you did?
not really, because it things felt more normal in
Mm-hmm.
college. Like it's more liberal in college, so most people. Um, Now I've heard it's different on the graduate level, but on the undergrad level, it, I don't see that sort of competitiveness where you have to feel like you gotta be better than everyone else to succeed. I've often heard that in the black community that you gotta try twice as hard just to be as good as white people. I've never felt that pressure, at least not on the undergrad level. Now on the graduate level, I've heard that may be the case depending on
Hmm.
the program or the institution where you are. But no, I didn't feel like I had to work harder. If anything, it was funny because sometimes I would do. I'm thinking I'm just doing average, and but then I find I'm doing better than my white counterparts. Like I remember I forgot what class it was. I think it was one of my psychology classes, and I got an A in it. And we were talking on Facebook, and she was like, "What you get in that class?" I'll say, "Oh, I got an A." She's like, "Oh, I hate you." She's like, "Oh, I got a C or something like that." I was like, "Oh, my bad." Excuse me. And it's like that wasn't even a class that I was even like working like it, working hard to get an A for. So
Hmm.
it was just funny. But no, I've never felt that sort of pressure that people talk about where you got to work twice as hard to succeed. I'm pretty sure that is true in some respective fields, or depending on the institution where you are, particularly like a more elite university.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really had that pressure so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, in
For me,
college, a
in
little
college,
bit,
a
but
little bit,
mostly
but
when I got
mostly
into the
when I got into the
corporate world, especially
corporate world,
accounting,
especially accounting,
where there's not a lot of
there's not a
black
lot of
men
black
in that
men
field.
in that field.
So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I
So
just felt like
sometimes
I
I
was
just
just
felt like
out
I
in
was
the
just
island,
out in the island,
that I really had
that
to
I
go in
really
there
had
and
to go in there and
prove myself
prove myself
just to be taken
just to
serious.
be taken serious.
You know?
You know, the irony was also, like I said, I was a triple major. All the majors I went into were like um, white majority people
Yeah.
in those fields. Yeah, I'm pretty sure like when you went to college too, like um, but your cousin and I can talk about it, like can tell you about it. Like it used to be to the point at Maryland, we used to say you knew what someone's major was by their race.
Hmm.
So it's like, oh, criminal justice. Oh yeah, he's black. Um, Engineering, Asian or African. Computer science. Like African or Asian. Business, white or Asian. Humanities, white, probably woman. like like you could tell, and so like all the things I chose were like white, like philosophy, pretty much all white males. Psychology, pretty much all white females. Linguistics, like all white, but kind of mixed, but kind of mixed male, but mostly female.
Yeah.
So yeah, despite usually all being like usually the only black dude in almost all of my classes, I never felt like pressure like I had to be the representative for all of us. Like I had to make sure everything I said was on point because I'm representing the whole race when I talk. Like I've never felt that pressure, but it's because, like I said, being in the DC suburbs and then even earlier when I lived in Illinois, um, going to school in a mixed crowd, I've always felt comfortable, you know, in a non-black setting. So I never
Mm.
felt that sort of pressure like I have to be
Yeah.
like a representative for all black men whenever I'm in a company of non-black people. I've never really felt that because it's always felt normal since elementary school being around non-black kids.
See, I was the opposite. I was in
I said I was in
all black
all
mostly
black
in
mostly in
grade school,
grade school.
and then when I got to high
When I
school,
got
I
to
got
high
the
school, I got the
more
more
diverse.
diverse.
But the first
But the
8 years of
first
my
8 years
schooling,
of
I
my
was
schooling, I was
predominantly black for the
predominantly
most
black
part.
for the most part. Yeah, see, it was the reversal when I came back to Baltimore and I went to
Hmm.
I went to middle school and high school. It was predominantly black again until I moved to to the DC suburbs. So that was the reverse culture shock, was being around all black people all the time, and that's why people kept saying, "Oh, you sound white," or
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, I had to hurt, I had to hide the fact that I love science. Um, that I love classical music. I don't think most people knew I love classical music, stuff like that. And it's because I went to this school in Illinois where we had um we had a music class where we played musical bingo, and the way we musical bingo is we used to match the composer with the music that they made. And so I learned from playing that game in elementary school, it made me love classical music. So I started liking stuff like Mozart and Beethoven and Chopin and stuff that most black kids wouldn't even be familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, but I had to hide all of that because I always felt shamed that I didn't act like the other black kids. I literally felt like I wasn't like black enough
Mm-hmm.
when I came to these predominantly black schools in Baltimore. Like I didn't talk the way they did. To be honest, some people in Baltimore I couldn't even understand what they were saying because the way they used to talk. I made that joke a long time. Like there was like Chinese food that I didn't know what it was because the way that people used to pronounce it, and it's only made in Baltimore and Philly. What is it called? It's I forgot what it's called. It's like the noodles, and it's like drenched in sort of like ketchup and soy sauce.
Oh,
And it's like it's only in Baltimore and Philly, and but the way they used to pronounce it, um, like it didn't make sense because every time I would go to a Chinese takeout, I would look for it on the menu. I was like, I don't see this on here.
mm-hmm.
Like, because they would. Oh, I remember. They would say yakami. I was like, and I will always go on a Chinese takeout whether I was in Philly or in Baltimore. I was like, I don't see anything called yakami on here. Then it was like 10 years later, I realized they were saying yak gao mein,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and yak gao mein is like it's not real Chinese. It's just like sort of a Chinese type takeout dish, just mostly only made in like the Baltimore and Philadelphia area. But they used to call it yakami. I'm like, what the hell is yakami? Because I was like, I kept looking for it. I even asked like the people in the restaurant. I said, "Do you have something called yakami?" They was like, they didn't know what I was talking about. And I literally had a Chinese friend in high school at the time. We're still buddies to this day. Um, and I could never find it. Then it was like 10 years later after I graduated from high school, I realized I was like, oh, yak gao mein. I was like, okay.
Oh.
It's like a big noodle, and it's like sort of just like drenched in like some sort of like ketchup and soy sauce sort of thing, and egg, I think. And you can get it like with I guess like chicken or pork or shrimp or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like people in Baltimore have a particular dialect, and
Oh,
it
I
was
know.
very jarring. It was very jarring coming from the Midwest where we sort of have this sort of generic American accent
Mm-hmm.
coming back to the East Coast.
I remember Baltimore was the first time I heard tennis.
Yeah,
Mike said that
yeah,
too.
because
We
guys
say
say
sneakers in
basketball. They
Philly.
say tennis. Yeah, because like when I went to Philly, they say basketball shoes. They didn't say tennis.
Yeah. And the
And
first
like
time I heard it, I'm like, tennis?
and they
Mm,
was they would say call everything yo. Like
yeah.
everything is yo, and they don't know how to pronounce two. It's like two.
Yeah.
So I want that two. Like that's how they talk.
Mhm.
Or du or like and they don't say dog. They say Doug. Or like for cigarettes instead of calling it a like they're saying fog, but they say fug.
Mhm.
It's like so I always felt like I was trying to catch up with the slang and like just everything. Like I never felt black enough when I moved back to Baltimore because I didn't understand what people were saying. I didn't understand a lot of the mannerisms, so I always felt out of place. So I was like I was trying extra hard to like you know fit in, and that's when my grades started dropping. I started getting in trouble, stuff like that, trying to fit in with these knuckleheads.
Yeah. And I was around, but I was always one of the kids growing up where I didn't really have to be around them. But really in high school, like I said earlier, when I got the freedom away from Catholic school to public school, that's when I really started cutting up because I saw that it wasn't as strict, so to speak. So I got hung around people who used to cut class and just do crazy stuff. And that really dawned on me when I almost failed 10th grade, when I had to tell myself, like, nah, uh, it's not who I am. So I got myself together in 11th and 12th grade. That first year when I went to public school, and it was freedom. I used to cut class left and right.
It was the only time I ever cut class was, well, it was twice. It was with girls I was dating. It was once at Milford in Baltimore, and once in in Silver Spring with another girlfriend.
Yeah.
And both times they were the ones who pretty much wanted me to do it. Like I wouldn't have done it on my own if they didn't insist
Hmm.
on us doing it. Um, but it was weird. Like in Silver Spring, I was both at a high point and a low point when it came to school. High point because it was a much better quality education I was receiving there than I did either in Philly or in Baltimore. But low because I realized I had lapsed in a lot of my requirements, um, because of goofing around when I was in Baltimore, and two because they had different standards out there.
Hmm.
So, like for math, for one, like I had failed in math back in Baltimore, so I was catching up, um, in my senior level, my senior year in Silver Spring. And when I first came there, I asked my guidance counselor. I was like, "Do I need to take night school so I have enough math credits to pass?" She was like, "Oh no." She's like, "As long as you pass this class, you're fine." Then half a year later, like when it was time for me to graduate, she was like, like the only reason I even came up to her because I had good friends, my Indian friends. One of them was like my best friend at the time. They told me, they was like, "Yo, you're on the list of people they say aren't graduating." I'm like, "Wait, what?" They was like, "Yeah, man." I was like, "What? How?" I said, "Where is that?" I didn't even know they had a list. So they
Hmm.
they had a list of seniors who were at risk of not graduating, and I didn't know anything about that. So I came up to my guidance counselor and approached her about it. I was like, I said I saw a list saying I'm not going to graduate because I'm behind my math requirements. And I was like, I thought you said that I didn't need to go to. No, she was like, oh yeah, I thought you were going to night school. Mind you, I asked her when I first transferred there, do I need to
Yeah.
take a math class? Yeah. And she was like, no, as long as you graduate, you'll have enough credits. So she's like, oh no, I assumed you were going to night school. I was like, that is bullshit because I literally have to come up to you to get to go to night school.
Hmm.
So she was obviously bullshitting. And I even went to the assistant principal at the time and told him about it. And he was like, "Yeah, I'll look into it." And he was like, "Well, yeah, your guidance counselor said you were supposed to be going to night school." I'm like, "What?" So I had to end up going to summer school. That was like my lowest point. I
Yeah.
had to go to summer school to graduate high school that year, and that that was that was a wake up moment right there.
Yeah.
I might not have made that out of school in time. I would not have wanted to do a fifth year of school. The funny thing is, originally my father wanted me to skip my fourth year and just graduate my third year and just double up on my junior year. I'm glad I didn't do that though,
Hmm.
because because I don't think that's a good idea for kids unless they like are really excelling and they just don't have like um like an AP sort of or international baccalaureate sort of program at their school where they can excel because unfortunately most special education and most public education is only geared towards people on the lower tier of special education, not the higher tier. A lot of people don't know that people who are academically gifted need special education too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't recommend that whole skipping a year of school unless you are in that gifted bracket, because otherwise you're probably gonna do yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
But in any case, yeah. So, um, my issues, like I said, in the community was degeneracy and the glorification of it, and then making fun of guys who actually want to do something with themselves. And then,
Yeah, I experienced those things too. I experienced those things. Um, I used to kind of hide my intelligence a lot too because it wasn't always the best thing to do growing up, being showcasing how smart in certain things you were. So I was never part of the in crowd, but I was always around situations where I had to dummy down and kind of gear myself towards the environment I was around. I had to do that a lot.
yeah, and this is what leads to the saviors of black men sort of thing. Like,
Hmm.
we're the only community where you gotta hide that you're smart. Like, that's
Yeah,
crazy. Like, I
yeah.
could, you know what kind of looks I would have got if I told people I, that I love classical music. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
I used to buy little junior science kits, like I used to have like a little chemistry set, an environmental test kit, and all these sorts of things. That I would go out. I would go out, rock collecting. Uh,
I
other
was into
other.
programming computers. I used
Oh
to
yeah,
have a
or like
Commodore 64, and I used to talk
I had a
about that a
Tandy.
lot.
I had the. You remember the Tandy computer from Radio Shack?
Oh, I remember that. Got that Radio Shack.
And I would just be hours on it just programming, because it came with this large handbook of like pre-made software
Yeah,
programs, and it taught you how to be meticulous and logical, because when you um, when you were doing those formal sentences, if you got one string, if you got one character wrong, it messed up the whole thing.
yeah. Give you
So I
syntax
might have
error.
been, yeah, like you if you were doing like I could have been working on it for like 2 weeks, doing something, and and I finally hit run, and then it shows error. I'm like, oh my god. So sometimes I get lucky and I could find the syntax error, but other times I would just have to restart the whole thing all over again. I don't know how many people would have had the patience, and let's be frank, most kids don't have the attention span nowadays to be sitting there
Mm,
programming something meticulously for days,
yeah,
for hours, days, maybe even weeks, just to see something goofy, like to make the computer turn into like an image of Buddy Holly singing or something like that.
yeah. I used to
Or
just
the
like
or
print
like
the programming code. That's what I
yeah.
used to like doing.
And it's
And I
like
used to
some of those
talk to people
programs,
who used to come over to visit about it, and they just like, man, I ain't interested in that.
right? Or remember the computer, instead of a floppy disk, it was like a tape recorder that connected to the computer, and
Yeah.
then you would play like audio, and it was like a cassette file
Hmm.
program. So I had like a one for like grammar and one for math, and I would play, and I had video games, but I would be just as much on my computer, either programming or playing with my grammar and math stuff, as I would be on my classic Nintendo. And most people, you know, they would have thought that was completely nerdy, especially some of the people I ended up knowing, later on, people who, were on the streets. They would have been like,
Oh, I was called that to my face. I was a geek,
yeah, oh
and
yeah.
it's
I
not
remember,
normal.
I remember talking to girls on the phone. They're like, he sounds white. He must be ugly. I'm like, damn, what? Nah, for real. Like, at least, at least in DC, I never got that. But in Baltimore, man, they used to be brutal.
That's how Philly was.
Yeah, funny. My first girlfriend was in Philly. She was a black chick,
Hmm.
but she was like me. She was someone that people said sound white or whatever. So we sort of had a similar bond.
Yeah. All the females I was around, it was vicious. It was a hit or miss with most of them, though.
Damn, I
But they
wish.
used to be quick to tell you if they thought you was ugly or lame or whatever. They would
Oh
like
yeah,
you ugly, get out my face.
yeah. Like I said, in Philly, I didn't get that. Like, I mean, I didn't meet too many girls, but the ones I did meet, um, they seemed interested in me. Like the one that I ended up dating, but we didn't end up dating until I moved back to Baltimore. Then there was another one there that used to walk with me home after school. Of course, I was so clueless back then. I didn't realize she liked me.
Hmm.
But I had some success about. Like I said, the most pushback I got was in Baltimore. Like either you white, you corny. Then then I got that in college from a few girls. I'm like, really? In college, girls still saying that?
College, wow.
Like, cause I made some corny jokes, and it was intentionally corny. Cause I had a former girlfriend. She was like, you tell corny jokes, but she was like, but she's like, you're intentionally being corny. I was like, oh, you got that? She's like, of course I did. I was like, not every girl got that. I said, some girls just thought I was corny. She was like, no, I know who you are. Of course, she wasn't black though. She was like Trinidadian and Chinese, so that might be why.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Another thing, so like in college, I started gravitating towards West Indian
Hmm.
women more than like regular black. I mean, I still dated black girls, but I gravitated more towards more West Indian women. But yeah, getting back to like the red pill stuff. So like I said, the first moment was like I said with my family when they completely shunned me when I was trying to go to college. I'm like, how are you gonna shun someone when they try and do something good?
Yeah.
Mind you, I was going. I had my issues back then for sure. But why would you know, why would you punish someone for trying to do something good? But then you'll reward someone for mediocrity, or like you're celebrating when Pookie come out of jail. But
Hmm.
heaven forbid someone wants to go to college or get there or go to grad school. Like, now you're being uppity.
Hmm.
But then the other red pill moment was with this girl, and so we, my friends, they took me to this party um, at this dorm, and we knew these girls, and so we were all drinking or whatever. And because I was drunk, I had the courage to actually talk to this girl who I thought was like way above me. Again, that was my mindset back at the time. But because I was a little inebriated, I had the courage to actually approach her, and I was just like, hey, I was like, hey, I really like you. Um, maybe we can hang out or do something, whatever. And she was being polite, but she like kind of blew me off. She's like, yeah, well, maybe, whatever. I was like, all right, cool. I was like, well, damn. I was like, I was like, well, I guess there's no success there. So I'm leaving, and then her little Latina friend come up, and she's pulling on me like, hey, come here. Like she's like pulling me to the bed with her, and I'm like, nah, I'm good, I'm good. She's like, whatever. And so I leave, and I think this is the first night I ever had this. I've drunk a full 40 ounce of Steel Reserve.
Hmm.
I'll never do that shit again. That's like I had Steel Reserve before, but I had a whole 40 ounce of that mess. That's like drinking like liquid gasoline. That stuff was horrible. But so I leave because, like I said, the girl I actually wanted rejected me, and then her friend, who was in the same room with her, was trying to drunkenly seduce me or whatever. So I left, and then the next day, I hear some bullshit from my friend saying um, that the Latina girl said I tried to come on to her, and that when the other girl had fell asleep, the one who I actually wanted, that I was trying to get with her, I was like, I was trying to mess with her. I was like, no, I wasn't, and they didn't know whether I was telling the truth or not. I was like, what? I was like, yo, what in the f? Because
Yeah.
in college, something like that could get serious if someone wanted to press the issue. But I was like, that's not at all what happened. I was like, yo, I said I talked to what's her name, and she wasn't interested. She went to her bed and passed right out. I said then, um, let's just call her Maria or Mariah, whatever. Um, Maria was like, you know, pressing up on me, talking about, you know, you want to, sleep with me or whatever. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. And she was like, fine, whatever. And then I left. And so they was like, so my guys were giving me you ever see like Futurama or whenever when they do the little squinty eye thing, they're like,
Yeah.
that's sort of how that's sort of like how my homeboys were looking at me. They was like, and I was like, first of all, I don't. I was like, God, I was like, I was telling him, I was like, dog, I'm not even interested in Maria. I was like, she's fat. Like, I wasn't into her. I was like, why would I? I said, first of all, why would I be pressing up on her? Like, I'm not attracted to her. And I was like, two, what's her name? She passed out, so how would she even know what transpired between me and Mariah? Right. So, and then I think they believed me later on because then later on, one of my other buddies, who was like more the pretty boy of the group,
Hmm.
he tried her as well, and she shut him down too. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not just me. She shut. I said, oh, she's just trying to be, you know, I see how she is. I was like, she just shutting everyone down because he
Yeah.
pressed up on her too. Like basically, he was like, yo, he was smoother with it. Like he held her hand and was like, what's up? Can we get together? And she was like, I'll see and talk about. She's like, I'll see. We'll see about it. She blew him off the exact same way she blew me off. And then another day, the little fat Latina girl Maria, she pressed up on one of my other homeboys when we were, but at our place, and he was like, forget it. He banged her. Cause no, the next morning we was like, yo, what happened? He was like, yo, she was like, I don't want to use his real name. She was like, uh, yeah, you think it's the bomb? Like, I was like, we all busted out laughing. I was like, see, I told you. So they knew I was telling the truth. I think after that, because like I said, one got shut down the same way that I did, and the other one, the girl pressed up on him just the same way she pressed up on me, except the difference was he smashed, I didn't. But yo, that was a wake up moment. I was like, how the hell they were willing to throw me under the bus for, and I did literally nothing wrong.
Mm.
And the funny thing was, I was under the impression back then, I was one of those guys who used to think, oh well, brothers who talk to girls, to women outside their race must not have any game or they're weak or whatever. I was one of those dudes. So
Hmm.
when it was opportunities where I could have dated other chicks, um, like I usually didn't because I was under the impression that I would look, less than or corny if I dated someone who wasn't black. So this is why I jumped onto the whole SYSBM thing and then eventually a passport bro thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Oh,
yeah,
you know, it's getting late. I have to go to the gym in the morning, but it's been fun. I really enjoyed this. You
yeah, man, we can
guys
do it
do it
again. That
again.
would be great. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you
If I
for
can figure out how to get rid of this echo's been happening the whole live stream. I have to try to figure out what it's from.
it might be
It's like I'm
you know
saying something. It's like feedback.
it might be the phone or it might be something electrical in your room because
Yeah.
I'm not getting it here and I got lights on, I got my desktop, my phone, I mean, my TV and all that, but I'm not getting any feedback. But sometimes I'll lose connection in here though.
Yeah.
That's the only problem I'll usually get. But I usually don't get any feedback. It must. I'm guessing it's some sort of electrical equipment in your room causing some sort of feedback.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out what it is. Cause like every time I say something, it's like a feedback and an echo.
But yeah, if you can come back, I like to make it a part two, and then we can sort of talk about how I moved into like not just SYSBM, but like traveling, and
Okay.
how I met my wife overseas because she's Filipina. So, have you seen any streams where I've when I've brought her on?
No, I'm gonna go
No,
back
I'm
and
gonna
look
go
at
back
some
and look
during
at
this time.
some
I
during
haven't
this time.
seen
I
it.
haven't seen it. The latest one was, I think the one when she talked about her dream trip. Like we sent her on a trip to Indochina. So her dream trip was to travel the entire Indochina region, which is like Thailand, Burma, Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia. So she got to do that, and think I think that was the last time she was on. She's gonna come back on. Um, I don't I don't use her all the time just because I don't want her to be like the reason why I get people to come on to watch
Yeah.
the channel. Yeah. But I have encouraged her to start her own channel, and we actually have a channel up that she can use if she decides to do so. But
No.
yeah, but if you can come back, we can go over that. I can tell you like how I finally got over like my whole uh, brainwashing of only dating black women and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, would
yeah,
love to,
would
and I
love
can
to,
share a
and I
little
can
bit of
share a
my
little bit of
story
my
too,
story too. Oh,
a little bit
absolutely.
more.
A little bit
What
more.
got me
What
down,
got me down,
how I left
how I
Philly and
left
got down
Philly
to
and got
Georgia.
down
It's
to
always
Georgia.
an
It's
interesting
always an
story.
interesting
And
story.
what happened
And
to
what
me while I
happened
was
to me
here.
while I was here. Okay. Yeah, definitely want to hear that because, like I said, I mean, I don't plan on staying in America for long, but if I did, I would definitely get out of Baltimore.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like the Northeast, I just, it's not a great place to live or raise a family.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree. All right, bro. I
Okay.
don't want to keep you. I know you say you gotta work out in the morning. And, I'm
Yeah,
all about encouraging people to stay fit.
definitely. But
Definitely.
we got to do this
But we got
again.
to
I'll
do
let
this
you know
again.
when
I'll
we can
let you
do
know
part
when we
two.
can do part two. All right. Definitely, man. Appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
No
Take
problem.
care.
Okay. All right,
Bye
care.
bye.
Thank you. All right, guys. That's it.